Even if you try to cause trouble for us, it won't really affect you much. After all, it's not like you're losing anything valuable. I sighed as I finished the final check. You're closing your account, right? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, even though their disdainful looks made me feel disgusted. I decided it was time to show those who look down on others because of their background what it feels like. So, I smiled and thought, I'll give them a taste of their own medicine. My name is Tiffany. I'm a 29-year-old office worker. I live peacefully with my mom while working. My dad passed away when I was young due to a chronic illness that had worsened. Even though he was very busy with work, he always made time for our family, and I have fond memories of playing with him on his days off. When Dad died, it was a shock for Mom and me, but she made sure I didn't feel lonely by spending time with me. Luckily, Dad had made financial arrangements with the former CEO to ensure we'd be taken care of. Thanks to this, I could go to college, and my grandparents, especially the ones who lived nearby, were very supportive. They helped take care of me when Mom was at work, and we still visit them during holidays like Christmas. I am who I am today because of the support from many people. To give back, I went to a national university and got a job at a major company. I even thought about working at a bank. My dad was supposed to inherit something, but I chose to pursue a career I loved. I've already handed over the bank responsibilities and don't worry about it. Thanks to a supportive home life and the freedom to enjoy my hobbies, I wasn't really interested in romance. However, now that I'm older, many of my friends are married and have kids, which got me thinking about marriage. That's when something unexpected happened. A colleague at work, who I've been close with since our early days, asked me, "Hey Tiffany, aren't you interested in love?" She mentioned that she knew someone struggling to find a match. This person was well-educated and handsome, and she thought I might like to meet him. She said, "Really, I think it's a shame that someone as accomplished as you isn't dating. There are even a few people at the office who are interested in you." This colleague has a wide network and is always sharing stories about her own relationship. She's quite concerned about my lack of romantic involvement, so I agreed to meet a man named Is. The meeting was set for a cafe. As I waited nervously, a man approached me. "Hi Tiffany, nice to meet you. You're Yosef, right?" I asked. "Yes, that's right. Thank you for meeting with me today," he replied. Yosef's expression was blank, and he seemed to be sizing me up, which surprised me a bit. He then sat down across from me and quickly started the conversation. "So what do you do for work?" he asked. "I work in sales at a company," I said. "I enjoy interacting with people and sharing my opinions, which is why I chose sales. I find it fulfilling, especially when customers are happy with their purchases." "What's the name of your company?" he asked. I told him the name, and he paused for a moment before smiling. His smile wasn't friendly, it was more like one of satisfaction. "My company is quite large and well regarded. We're trusted by our customers," I said. Since he asked about my job, I decided to return the question. "What do you do?" Yosef snorted with pride and began to boast. "I work at Sunrise Bank as a department head. Sunrise Bank is a big deal, you know. The work is tough, not something just anyone can handle. But since my dad is the CEO and I'm the successor, it's different for me." His bragging made me uncomfortable. Sunrise Bank is indeed a major bank, and I had heard about it, but I didn't expect Yosef to talk about it so aggressively. "Wow, that's impressive. Sunrise Bank is a big place, isn't it?" I flattered him on purpose, thinking this might be our last meeting. I decided it was better to be polite. Pleased with the flattery, Yosef continued to boast about himself. Talking to him was painful because he rarely listened to me and always turned the conversation back to himself. He even made outrageous comments about his romantic prospects. "I'm quite popular, you know, but it's always people who don't match my family's background or education level who come to me," Yosef said. I thought his attitude might be the problem, and I had already decided not to meet him again after informing my friend. Despite my discomfort, Yosef still seemed satisfied and made a suggestion. "I'd really like to meet your parents," he said. "But we just met today," I replied, surprised. "Exactly, that's why it's important to see if our families are a good match if we're going to date," he insisted. Inside, I screamed, "I have no intention of dating you." But he seemed oblivious to my discomfort and kept pushing. "When are your parents available?" he asked. "I'll have to discuss it with my mom." "What about your dad?" I felt increasingly disgusted, but couldn't find the strength to end the conversation. "My dad passed away when I was young," I said. Yosef's eyes narrowed, and he simply replied, "I see," and fell silent. "Well, send me a date that works for you later, and I'll adjust my schedule." No, I mean thank you. Should we leave now?" I asked, trying to wrap things up. Before I could finish, Yosef stood up. It felt like talking to someone from a different world. Despite my reluctance, I had given him my contact information and discussed meeting our parents. His disdainful reaction to my father's absence bothered me. In the end, we agreed to meet again with our parents. When I explained this to my mom, she smiled and said, "Maybe you were just nervous because you haven't dated before. But if it doesn't feel right, just say no. I'll be there too." I felt guilty for dragging her into this, but she laughed heartily. "It's okay, no need to feel bad. Besides, I'm curious about Sunrise Bank. Let's see how it goes." So Yosef and I arranged a family meeting. I had no idea that Yosef had planned the meeting for such a shocking purpose. On the day of the meeting, we arrived at the fancy restaurant Yosef had chosen. It was a big place, and our table was ready, but Yosef still hadn't arrived. We entered the restaurant and waited. Shortly after the scheduled time, Yosef and his family arrived. "Sorry we're late, the traffic was terrible. Nice to meet you." "Thank you for today," Yosef said. His family took their seats without apologizing further. I was irritated but didn't want to start a fight, so I began the family meeting. After a while, Yosef's mom, Morgan, with a sly smile, asked, "So where's your father? Is he coming later?" I looked at Yosef, but he just smirked and didn't say anything. I had already told him that my dad had passed away. Morgan acted as if she didn't know, even though she had agreed to meet our families. My mom quickly responded, "My husband passed away from an illness when Tiffany was young, so today I'm here as her mother." Mom spoke calmly, but Morgan raised her voice in an exaggerated manner. "Oh, Tiffany is from a single-parent family?" I was taken aback by her words. Even after I had mentioned my father's illness, her tone was clearly malicious. Being from a single-parent family must make life quite hard, huh? But she graduated from a public university, that's commendable. Still, dating her might be complicated, Morgan continued. Mom and I were left stunned. Despite being present, they spoke so disrespectfully and mocked us as if being from a single-parent family was something bad. Such words were inappropriate for a first meeting and made us very angry. I responded quietly, "Excuse me, but after my dad passed away, Mom raised me with great care. I owe my current life to her. Isn't it rude to speak about someone like that when you just met?" However, Morgan burst out laughing. "Rude? Isn't it more absurd for the daughter of a single parent to think about marrying into a high-class family?" She continued, "I'm not really into strong-willed women. This is pointless. There's no getting through to them." Feeling disappointed and angry, I stared at them in disbelief. I had high hopes since they worked at a major company, but now I saw that they were looking down on us. Morgan added more insults, saying, "Well, you'll eventually carry on Sunrise Bank, so maybe you're not quite at our level." Trembling with anger, Mom glared at them and said, "Did you invite us here just to look down on us? I've heard from Tiffany about the way you're treating us because we're a single-parent family." It was the first time I had heard Mom speak so sternly. She continued, "Please stop with the accusations. It's just teasing, but no one likes to be mocked. All your remarks are condescending. We have no intention of listening to this any further." Yosef's family looked displeased with Mom's clear statement. They were clearly dismissive, calling us commoners and showing their contempt. Mom sighed and said, "Actually, we have funds deposited with your bank, but we don't wish to keep them there with people like you." "Oh really? But we don't know your name, so it can't be much. It's probably insignificant," Morgan replied. "Even if you try to cause trouble, it won't really affect us. Low-class, poor people are not needed," she added disdainfully. It was clear that even Mom's final attempt at reconciliation was in vain, as they continued to speak with contempt, oblivious to our feelings. I sighed and made the final confirmation, "We're closing our account." With a mocking tone and disdainful expressions, Yosef's family looked at us. I thought to myself, let's make those who judge others by their background suffer a bit. I smiled at the thought. "Is that so? Then we will proceed as such, and please consider this meeting as never having happened. Of course, we had no intention of marrying into a family with a single-parent background. Well then, we'll take our leave now." Mom and I stood up. "Oh, don't worry about today's bill," I said. "It's too expensive for you." With that, our family meeting ended. Later, my phone was flooded with calls from Yosef, which I had anticipated. I had no intention of answering and promptly blocked his number. A few days later, I received a call from Grandpa Kyle. Mom and I went to Sunrise Bank for a meeting. Yosef's family looked pale when we arrived. As soon as they saw us, Morgan stood up and bowed deeply. "I am extremely sorry for what happened," she said. I didn't respond to Morgan's apology but just smiled and asked, "What exactly are you apologizing for?" Morgan bit her lip, trembling with anger. It was clear she was frustrated because there were many things they should apologize for. The situation started when I said we would close our account. The amount in our account wasn't particularly large, so closing it wouldn't have caused much damage. But Kyle's situation was different. Kyle managed the inheritance left by my dad at Sunrise Bank for our benefit, and he also had his own account there. If all accounts, including Kyle's and my dad's inheritance, were closed, it would total about $7 million. In other words, their disrespect led to the closure, and importantly, Kyle is the former CEO of the bank. Dad was supposed to take over the bank, but he passed away young, so the position went to Scott. I didn't know Tiffany was related to the former CEO. Scott, looking anxious, tried to make excuses, but that didn't change anything. Their prejudice against our family was their fault. Are you saying if we were relatives, you would have treated us differently? I asked. Hey, don't talk to Dad like that. It's your fault for not telling us your grandpa was the former CEO. I don't have any obligation to tell strangers like you that. Besides, you were the ones who started this and mocked us. Yosef couldn't respond and looked frustrated. You insulted me, knowing I was from a single-parent family. When I said I would transfer the bank due to insecurity, you told us to go ahead. We just did as we were told. Have you ever thought about how it feels to have your family insulted? Silence fell. Morgan looked hopeless, and Scott hung his head, but Yosef still looked dissatisfied. Just then, the door opened and Kyle, the former CEO, walked in. Seeing Kyle, Yosef and Morgan went pale. Yosef glared at me, but Kyle said, even after being given a chance to reflect, you're still only thinking about yourselves. It's not my fault, Yosef said. It's her. Watch your words, Kyle warned. If you continue, you'll end up in even worse trouble. Yosef fell silent and glared at me again. Resign, he said. Who would have thought a single-parent's relative would be the former CEO? You knew I was the future CEO and came to the meeting just to mock us. Kyle told him to be quiet and glared sternly at him. Then, Kyle turned his attention to Scott. Scott shrank under Kyle's gaze. I understand wanting to leave the bank to your son, but now that I see his attitude, it's impossible for him to continue as CEO, Kyle said. That's ridiculous. Scott started to argue but sat back down under Kyle's stern gaze. You still don't understand that your attitude is the problem. Although I'm retired, the board will decide. If you have something to say, speak to them. We've recorded the previous conversation and this one. Don't forget that the recordings will serve as evidence, Kyle added. I took out a voice recorder and played back our previous conversation. The faces of Yosef and his family turned pale as they heard their own condescending remarks. How dare you prepare something like that? It's unfair, Yosef exclaimed. It was just a precaution, I replied. But remember, you forced me into this situation. Yosef had nothing to say. Mom and I thanked them and left. In the end, Kyle didn't officially transfer the funds. Scott was removed from his CEO position and Yosef, unable to handle the blow to his pride, resigned. Kyle's influence meant that Yosef would struggle to find work in the same field again. Scott seemed determined to work until retirement, but Kyle said it would be tough for him both mentally and physically. Morgan, who used to enjoy the privileges of being the CEO's wife, started part-time work to maintain her lifestyle, but her attitude likely made it hard for her to keep a job. I apologized to my friend who had introduced me to Yosef. She wasn't at fault. She had only heard about him through someone else. Mom was initially concerned about being a single parent, but I reassured her that I was happy with the support I received. Kyle invited us to visit him again, and I was grateful for his help in resolving the situation. As for dating, I'm content with my life now and prefer to cherish those who support me. Maybe someday I'll meet someone who truly clicks with me, but for now, I'm focusing on what's important in my life.